So we've
Good
got
morning,
these
Pete.
exemptions now, and some are able to cross the border. Let's first of all get your reaction to that.
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction, Pete. We have been talking to the government for some time about the critical nature of agriculture, and obviously we want food and fibre, for that matter, producers to be able to continue to do their job that they do so well and put the food and fibre on the kitchen tables and supermarket shelves of Australians. So I've been talking to them for a while, and it has taken a little while to get the states to actually cooperate and do the right thing. But the Agriculture Minister, Prime Minister and National Cabinet on Friday got a level of agreement. So now we've got to work in the next 2 weeks and work out what that code looks like.
So what does that mean for, humble drivers, for people who have to transport goods across the border? Is it they still can't quite do that yet? Help me out here, Tony. Have they got to fill out a form, and how complicated can that be?
It can be complicated, and what we've seen is hold-ups at the borders where trucks have, had to decouple machinery and go and get tested and leave B-doubles on the side of the road and things like that. So completely unhelpful, the cooperation or lack of cooperation amongst the states and process. So hopefully in the next 2 weeks we'll get that sorted, and we won't have those delays. We've seen farmers, have got properties in different states and having real trouble getting across the borders to actually look after animals, look after crops. So this is really much needed, and it is a step in the right direction, and we really hope now that it can be executed in a consistent way by the states.
What is this going to mean for those people who do cross the borders and, let's say by some chance they are infected with COVID-19? Are the rules suggesting that they just can't get in contact with people before they go back to where they came from, they recross the border again?
So what they'll need to do is, when the system gets and the process gets established, is to have those processes in place. So if they do get tested, and obviously they subject to the health requirements, and that normally means isolation for 2 weeks. But there is a provision that allows them to go across the border and do their business, their essential business. And there are many jobs and many roles in agriculture that people don't normally think about. Diesel mechanics or agronomists or vets and these sorts of things that keep the machinery working in agriculture. And keeps the system going. So all of those jobs we hope will be able to continue. But if there are occurrences where people have tested positive, obviously as an industry we want to keep the population safe and rural and regional communities safe. So there's got to be those processes built into the system as well.
What concerns, if any, remain, Tony?
It's actually getting it right, Pete. It's getting the systems to agree and cooperate. They've said in National Cabinet on Friday, the premiers and the prime ministers, they're going to do this. Now we actually have to see it implemented. There have been a number of instances at borders where there's discretion put in place, and that's what we don't want. We want a clear system so everyone knows the rules, and that is going to take cooperation across the state. So the agriculture ministers are driving it. We need the health ministers to actually get on board and do their job and make sure that they know that agriculture is an essential service.
It doesn't apply to seasonal workers though, so how much of that concerns you, especially now that we're heading into spring?
Yeah, on Friday with National Cabinet, they did make some provision for seasonal workers and Pacific Islanders, Pacific Workers Scheme to actually be expanded. So there has been a shortage, but that provision on Friday, an agreement on Friday, will allow the states to actually access more workers. And again, that's critically needed. We've always had a bit of a challenge with labour and agriculture, and we've always relied on a percentage of foreign workers. So whether they're backpackers or whether they're seasonal workers coming from Pacific Island nations, they're really critical. And again, on Friday, that was a step in the right direction. So we can get things like mangoes and cherries and plums and all those beautiful fruits off the trees in the coming months.
So you've got these developments, I guess, New South Wales and Queensland. Would you now be applying pressure for the remaining borders, for other borders that are having the same problems?
Exactly. That's what it is a national approach to allow agriculture and all of the associated roles to actually function. So that means all of the freight, all of the workers that have a link to an essential service like agriculture, and we already have a long list, but be giving that list to governments to make sure that they know what we're talking about when we say that. And there is a consistent, streamlined approach across the state. So not just Victoria, New South Wales or Queensland, but South Australia, the Territory, WA, making sure that everyone abides by a similar system and there is a streamlined approach across the borders. What we're dealing with now, Pete, is not an emergency or not a crisis, it's actually a new normal. So we've actually got to have a system in place that identifies the risk, assesses the risk and manages that risk.